Hi, I'm at the Global AI Summit on Africa in Kigali, Rwanda. I am so excited to be here. There are entrepreneurs, leaders in artificial intelligence, thinkers, change makers, gathered to talk about artificial intelligence and what the African solutions are to African problems. This is the moment that we are gathering to try and resolve what we can do for ourselves as a continent. The Embedded podcast is doing this series of conversations in partnership with the Rwanda Centre for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And I'm so excited to introduce my first guest, Tonee Ndungu, the CEO and founder of Kitabu. Tonee, it's great to have you on Embedded. Thank you.
Come on now.
It's my pleasure.
I am excited to be here. This is so cool.
I love how we met. I was accosted at the airport en route to Kigali from Nairobi.
First of all,
and, I always balance a bit of water on my suitcase, thinking it's going to go straight.
What was happening? Because I was trying to be, I'm trying to be a gentleman. I'm seeing this lovely young lady walking away, and her bottle of water is on the ground, and I'm like, why did she drop this? Maybe she wanted my attention. So I go out there being chivalrous, pick it up, and I'm like, madam, did you drop this? And then you turn around and I'm like, I know this face. And
even with the shade, behind the shades.
The big shades, the very big shades, like the LA shades. And I was like, this is Zain.
We ended up having such a great conversation.
Wasn't it?
And I love it, and the work that you were describing that you do. And I was just fascinated about EdTech and all the experiences that you've had in your life that have brought you to this moment.
This moment.
Yeah. Now, you're a successful entrepreneur. And I'm an unsuccessful entrepreneur. so
whenever I look at my balance sheet, I always wonder. I don't know what success is because the balance sheet isn't reflecting.
So, I would love for you to share a little bit about your journey, to Kitabu.
Yeah.
Sort of your life before the entrepreneurial success.
Right. I think every entrepreneur has a come to Jesus moment, whatever translation of that is. And my come to Jesus moment was very young. When I was in high school. And I always tell this story because this is fundamental for a young man. When I was in a high school, because my high school was a boys' boarding school, it's called Mangu High School. No, that's the baby one. That's the trauma point.
Right.
The high school, I was in Mangu High School. It's one of Kenya's Ivy League school type situations for smart kids. And in that class of smart kids, I was one of the kids who was smartest from the back, as my dad would say it. I didn't perform well in school in my early years because of the way I learned, being very different from the way other kids learned. But my father put something in my hands that I consider, in my time, the technology of the day, which was a Sony Walkman. And he said to me, I noticed that you listen very well and you remember a song, almost all the lyrics, in 2 listens. But physics and biology and chemistry and mathematics, you're struggling. So what if we took what was your classroom setup and just gave it a music setup where instead of listening to a teacher in class, record your books and see what happens. And my grades changed from D's to C's and B's and A's. And I realized in that moment that there's a solution for everything, including human nature, just the way we are framed. And I've always walked in life with that in mind.
I just wonder, that experience of being dyslexic, how did that shape your entrepreneurial journey and what you ultimately ended up creating?
Human nature's, I think from my experience, human nature's greatest kryptonite or greatest fear is failure. Being dyslexic, which for many people may or may not know, is a learning, I call it a learning other. I don't call it a learning challenge. It's just the way my mind is designed is very different. And I don't learn the way other people learn. I just happened to not be the smartest kid in class. And I was used to failure, and I understood that just because I'm not good at it doesn't mean I fail. And entrepreneurship will teach you something about failure. It will teach you so much about failure.
I failed so many times since leaving CNN. And I keep thinking to myself, how could I just have this one thing that worked?
It's consistent.
There's a consistent failure after that. But like the Chinese say, I only have 35 failures that I've put under my belt, and that is really the moment that you face yourself, right? And you're in the arena And you're
fighting,
bloody and you're fighting.
Yes, exactly. And I loved what Brené Brown said when she talked about that. The thing I've come to appreciate about success is failure is part of it.
Yeah.
Failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of it. We always talk about the light bulb and how there were 9,000 ways not to do it until the 10,000th way of doing it was found. So for me, being comfortable in getting things wrong was the beginning of me getting things right. And I think that's so key when you're an entrepreneur, because when you look at this moment of artificial intelligence, from November 2022, when OpenAI came into the market, that is when a lot of people got to understand AI. But Tonee has been in the EdTech and tech space for more than 18 years. For me, this was a coming of age of an experience that has brought me to this moment where I knew how to leverage my networks, my resources, and my influence to get what I needed to get out of this AI age. There's a lot of people who are now new in the market. They're even better placed than I am. But because I don't have the experience of mistakes and choices that were wrong and making wrong turns and hiring the wrong people and investing in the wrong things, because they don't have that experience, they can't take advantage of this opportunity the way I can.
And you ultimately, in spite of all those failures, you ultimately succeeded. You built a great company. You sold it. You got some good cash. But yeah,
you know, the money comes and goes, young lady.
Okay. So, and then you decided to turn around and invest that in Kitabu and an AI-driven learning platforms. How did you know that that is what you wanted to do?
Because I wanted to solve a problem that brought me to that point. Even after building out what we built out in the hubs and creating the nexus point for what then became the Silicon Savannah, which we never preempted, Eric Hessman and I. We knew that there was a community of developers. We just didn't know bringing them together in 2 rooms in 1 floor of Bishop Magwa would change the Kenyan ecosystem the way it did. But then they came and they took up the reins and they run it. When I walked out of that, I was like, what do I want to do intrinsically? What is my calling? And I've always felt your calling is usually, and a friend of mine says this really well, your mess is your message. Your calling is usually where you found your greatest trauma, right? And for me, it was education. So Kitabu was, for me, a fulfillment of that.
Which means in
pain.
Swahili.
In Swahili, yes. Kitabu means book in Swahili. And apparently 49 other languages, like Urdu, which is Kytabu. And
Kytabu, yes, in Arabic.
There you go,
yes.
in Arabic. So that then became for me the journey I chose to take. And I've never left it. I've never let it go. Because I recognize what education did for me. I am everything I am because of the infrastructure that I lacked and the technology that was availed to me at that time. And Kitabu then became, for me, the springboard upon which roughly 680 million children in the continent of Africa are going to leverage on to grow. And then when AI came in, because it's a startup and we're very agile in the way we think, we immediately saw that this is what education is going to become, if it is not that already. When AI came out in November 2022 to the world, and in February, Chegg, which was the most popular homework tool on the world, almost went bankrupt. I knew immediately that the tide has turned, and we need to move with that. And I cannot stop, and I will not stop until Africa has embraced it completely.
What did you actually do practically that made that shift to an AI-powered platform?
So for the longest time, school management systems, teachers' apps, and students' apps were the products of EdTech companies, education technology companies. We provided technology services for schools, for teachers, for learners, and for parents. Immediately when we saw that, we understood that the difference between what we were building and what we were providing as a company and what AI brought is we had no intelligence in the tools that we had. And immediately we knew if our tools don't have intelligence, then our tools will add value to no one. So what does intelligence look like for students? Easy, personal tutor from childhood to PhD level. Could we build that? No. We don't have the capacity within the organization. And even with the help of the partners we had, it was very difficult to take our Somanasi product all the way to the end until OpenAI came and said, okay, we will give you compute, which they did. And things have changed in that front. But we also saw that the biggest gatekeepers for education and technology were always teachers. It was never schools. It was always teachers who were afraid to feel, quote unquote, dumb in class. And because they're the ones who are the masters of information, we knew we also needed to intervene with teachers and provide them with their own digital assistant for classrooms. So between Somanasi, which is our AI tutor for students, and Hodari, which is our digital assistant for teachers, we have created an ecosystem that allows teachers to feel enabled in classrooms, whereas the administrative level that is required of them has been reduced by 40%. And for children to know, I will never feel dumb like Tonee did in his class, because my AI tutor is never going to make me feel like that. And those are the two products we're putting out into the world.
Just describe them for me. So if I'm a student and I have the product, so I'm not going to feel dumb, I'm using this tool.
Yeah.
I mean, what is my experience, and is it built on mobile technology?
Yeah.
Is it digital
that. That's so
platform?
good.
Like, how am I experiencing it?
So children will have, we're still putting out product for children out towards the end of the year because trust and safety is a real issue, and the Kenyan Data Protection Act gives us some restrictions because a lot of the intelligence we're using is based out of the US. So we can't store information, for example, on ChatGPT servers because we've wrapped our product around ChatGPT. But to your question, what will they experience? It's a mobile application. We have a trick up our sleeves that I can't tell you. But in
Give
addition,
us a clue. Give a clue, Buona.
Let's put it this way: it's a wearable.
Yeah.
Right? We're giving children a wearable. We don't want kids to engage with mobile phones in class. We don't believe there's value in that. And so we're putting out a wearable towards the end of the year that kids will be able to wear on their person that becomes a verbal assistant to them. It records and it speaks back. I can't give you any more detail. But what we want to do is provide children with a personal digital assistant that they carry throughout their day in school. That hears what they are taught by the teacher, that hears what the child's thoughts are, that hears what the child is doing, and even in some cases sees what the child is doing and can guide them through their learning journey.
And how is the teacher empowered? It sounded like what you described was more an administrative tool that reduced admin time, that was then freed up time to talk to students.
Yes.
But are you evolving that for teachers?
Yes, and teachers have, and now I'm open and able to say this, teachers have a wearable. We decided, we looked at what Ray-Ban and Meta did.
So teachers and students.
So each are going to have their own piece. Teachers are going to have a wearable pair of spectacles, basically. It comes with a small language model. It comes with a storage space. It comes with 2 cameras, 2 microphones, and a speaker on their ears. And what the teacher does is when they use their device in a classroom, the cameras capture all the technical, I would call it, or administrative data. How many kids showed up? How many kids put their hand up when you asked a question? What did the teacher say? It creates minutes of the conversation, compares the teacher's conversation in class with what the curricula requires, and then tells the teacher, oh, you did good today, or, well, there's room for improvement. And what that does is it gives the teacher a personal digital assistant, real time. And all of that doesn't need the internet because it's stored between their device, which is the glasses they're wearing, and their mobile phone. And that's Hodari. Brilliant. That's exactly what that product does.
This is the Embedded Podcast at the Global AI Summit on Africa in Kigali, Rwanda. Coming up next, more of my conversation with CEO and founder of Kitabu, Tonee Ndungu.
Right now, AI only works for major languages such as English and French. This presents an issue in Africa when it comes to accessing quality data sets that power AI technologies. You see, 76% of Rwandans only speak Kinyarwanda. Over the last 7 years, we have created data sets of over 3,400 hours of Kinyarwanda. We have now scaled to 14 other countries in Africa with data sets covering 16 additional languages. We're accelerating our work with the support of the Rwanda Centre for Fourth Industrial Revolution, expanding African language footprint in AI technologies. By providing this foundational infrastructure, innovators can create AI solutions that reflect Africa's linguistic diversity and unique cultural realities.
Welcome back. I'm Zain Verjee in Kigali, Rwanda, hosting a special series of conversations with entrepreneurs, leaders, and innovators on artificial intelligence in Africa. How do you think of language in what you're building right now? You know, probably you're using Western large language models, right? And so what about African small language models that have cultural sensitivities, that have our stories, and we can learn and communicate in a diversity of languages? Like, Kenya, how many languages? Just one country on our continent has. So, and Swahili, is, while it's not the national language, it's not how children consume learning. So how do you think about how you'll develop your tools to address that?
So culturally, and I love that you've asked that question because, as you've said, the large language models we have were built on the internet, and the content that's on the internet, that is predominantly Western. It's predominantly, and folks use this, and I find it such an interesting way to put it. It's a lot of the storylines are not created by Africa for Africa. And predominantly, most of those storylines don't even have the inclinations of culture that we would dependent and rely on growing up. But the key thing, I think, which is really important, is a lot of those concepts, especially when it comes to education, are consistent. E remains equals to mc squared. Gravity remains gravity. Solar system remains a solar system. So there's some things we can take up from it, but then there's some things we need to replace. Now, here's where the value proposition is. The more we permeate AI into our cultures, the more we collect those languages and those nuances that cannot be found on the internet. As an oral speaking nation, and when I say the nation, I mean the African nation, a lot of our information was never stored in books or written format, or those were destroyed many years ago. What we know we have intrinsically in the way we learn, in the way we communicate, and what we teach, that needs to be collected. And what better way to collect it than in a classroom with teachers that are wearing wearables that are embedded in the way they teach. And then as we collect this data, create new small language models.
And how do we do that?
We record them, we collect them.
But technically, how are you going to execute that? Because there's a lot of conversation globally about contextual innovation and small language model building, right? For companies, for countries, for sectors. So we as Africans, what would you advise that are the key things for somebody to think about in building a small language model? We can acquire the data, but then technically how you build it.
I love this part, because when you so we were in the United Nations Program for Large Language Models, as a pilot project that was done over the last year and some. And one of the things we brought it down to is, what do we need? And we need three things. We need voices recorded. Number one, we need context elaborated on. So we need somebody to say, what does that voice that has been recorded say? And the third thing, and this is very clear for everyone, is we need it at scale. Because if you have few data points, those few data points don't really give you the context in the way they should. But if you have a large-scale data point, then you can be able to match what one person has said and what another person has said and compare it and come up with the contextual analytics that gives you explanation as to what this is. The first thing we need is data. A lot of it. When OpenAI went to Ireland and asked them, who would you, the Nordic country, would you like to help us with context and voice and language? The 300,000 people that were in that country all said, yes, we're happy to do it. And they'd call into a number, which is IVR, and record their text and say something, whether it's a storyline or whatever, in their own language. And when that was consumed by OpenAI and they were given their small language model, it's because they offered to participate in giving context, giving content, and giving their voices to that language. We haven't done that on our continent. So for us, that's how you do it. Very practical steps. It's nice to have all the big policy ideas and movements, but then let's be practical. Let's record as many voices as we can. Let's contextualize that data, and let's be as consistent as we can in getting this to scale. Then we can be able to get our small language models, because nobody's going to do it for us.
How do we skill ourselves up?
More people. We have a lot of people already. It's more people in front of microphones, in front of tools that record what they have to say. You have a fantastic project, I don't know if I can speak about it, of getting older people to sit in front of microphones and cameras and tell us these narratives that as they pass on, we keep losing. Can we get as many grandmommies and granddaddies to come and do that? Then that detail and that data is collected and stored for future generations. Can we do that in all languages, from Xhosa to Kiswahili and Kikuyu to Luo to Zulu? Can we do that? Then is when we have the context we need.
That story idea from Wakanyi Hoffman centers around an idea called Ubuntu ethics.
There you go.
Okay? And so the E word I'm going to hone in on and ask you about ethical AI. OpenAI, it was not very ethical in the way it treated Kenyans specifically.
This is true.
It was pretty abusive and quite deplorable, exploiting information, exploiting data, taking people out of poverty or paying people in poverty $1 a day. And so how do you think about ethical AI as our continent develops different technologies around artificial intelligence or African intelligence? How do you think about it in the work that you're doing?
I think people should be held accountable for decisions that were made that were poor. And I'm not saying that those decisions will stop being made. I think they are consistently being made in different sectors in different parts of the continent. But we should hold people accountable, and they should know that there is something to pay for that mistake. That said, I think there's a value in learning from why they came to us. Why did they come to Kenya? Why didn't they go to, whether it is India or Pakistan or any other part of the world? What value did this country and the young people in this country bring that they were the ones chosen? And then let's hone in on that skill and leverage on it. Those are the two things I will speak about in the OpenAI Africa-Kenya issue. But when it comes to the larger ethical conversation, there's two parts that I want to be able to balance out. We don't know what we're dealing with. And let no one stand up and say they do know. Nobody does. And in an era where we're fast-paced moving towards AGI, artificial general intelligence, and robotics, we're not sure what ethics even looks like in this place. Everyone is referencing movies like iRobot and all of that, trying to figure out the great 3 rules of AI. That doesn't exist in a world as fluid as ours. So I think for me, the way to start is always with ethics first. Start with AI trust and safety first. Start with the best intention and create rules around making sure these best intentions are cemented into the framework of the work you do. Then once that is done, start building on top of it. In our case, when we started doing work, Somanasi, in fact funded by the Gates Foundation, one of the things we found out very quickly is just the level of hallucination was borderline dangerous. And so we stopped working with children and started working with teachers, saying to ourselves, if we can empower the teacher and the AI can then protect the child from the AI that we're going to give the child. And that then became our new approach. Let's work with teachers first. Yes, children are more excitable, children have better uptake, children's parents will buy the devices. It's a better business case. But we want to go with the teachers first, which is the hardest place to go, because we recognize that trust and safety is ingrained in the way we want to do things. And with knowledgeable teachers, empowered teachers, and AI-first teachers, they have a better chance of protecting children from the tragedies we've seen around the world when AI gets kids to get to a point where they take their own lives. So those are the kind of thoughts we have as far as ethical AI is concerned in the use of AI.
You mentioned AGI and robotics. What are some of the trends specifically that are occurring that can impact the EdTech space quite significantly with AI? So I'm thinking here like avatars, for example,
You're
right?
in the right space. Yes.
I'm thinking of agentic flows, right?
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to figure out exactly what. Anyway, and the best way to figure it out is by doing it and building it. And that's what I think that anyone who wants to get in the AI space, just jump in, find a tool, use it, and just start immersing.
That's it.
But in terms of the EdTech as a sector, what are the trends that will impact it the greatest over the coming? Things are moving fast, so I'm scared to say months even.
I think it's days.
But,
let's start with the end in mind. I think that's a good way to paint out this picture. The World Economic Forum's job report said that more than 90 million people are going to lose their jobs over the next couple of years, and 175 or 127 million, I may have the number wrong, are going to get jobs added to them. What they didn't say is the sectors that will be completely decimated. Most of the things that young people were studying for 10 years ago don't even exist now. How much more now kids are studying for things that won't exist in the future? The entire verticals that just will not exist anymore. And many of them are in the service industry. So the education system of today needs to map out what the job space of tomorrow looks like. And it's just moving so fast, we're not even sure. And as a parent of pre-teens, I'm very concerned that my daughter's mathematics and biology and geography and history are actually going to serve her in any way, shape, or form as I see her using AI to solve all these problems for herself. I think education as a whole is now more than ever worthy of being questioned. What are we teaching our young people to do? Because in a previous generation, when I was in school, we were teaching young people to prepare themselves for jobs. That is what it was. That was why we went to school. It was quite a linear process. It was very straightforward. Do your thing, get your good grades, go into campus, get a good job, have a happy life. That was the equation. Now that doesn't work. You're having MBAs from Ivy League schools that are unemployable because their positions have been taken over by agentic AI. So how do you tell a student in school getting a 4.0 GPA that they have a guarantee, or there is a guarantee for their future? You cannot, which means we have to look at education and understand what the opportunities are. And I can't sit here and tell you I know what they are.
I was just about to say, what are they?
Exactly, I don't know. And I think that's the best place to be, because a week ago, I could have told you that there's a future in film, and a big future in film, until OpenAI did what they did with those images, and Sora and DALL-E. And now, in video from India is one of the fastest growing AI companies on earth. And in a couple of weeks, they'll be able to present an entire Hollywood movie on AI.
Having done a small film, the skill sets there are suddenly becoming about curation, not necessarily directing or shots or lighting. What is the right prompt for a series of images or 3-5 second pieces of moving video that I can prompt correctly and then select and curate my best one and then tweak it a little bit.
Think about
using AI and prompting.
Think about the millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars that went into creating a product like Avatar, and what that movie did for just the entire ecosystem of film in Hollywood. And then some kid in their bedroom with the right prompt will come up with the next version of that film that hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people will watch on their phones for absolutely nothing.
You're watching the Embedded podcast that's coming to you in partnership with the Rwanda Centre for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Coming up next, more on my conversation with Tonee Ndungu and how he sees entrepreneurship for the continent in artificial intelligence and beyond. Listen to his key message for leaders in Africa.
Right now, AI only works for major languages such as English and French. This presents an issue in Africa when it comes to accessing quality data sets that power AI technologies. You see, 76% of Rwandans only speak Kinyarwanda. Over the last 7 years, we have created data sets of over 3,400 hours of Kinyarwanda. We have now scaled to 14 other countries in Africa with data sets covering 16 additional languages. We're accelerating our work with the support of the Rwanda Centre for the Fourth Industrial Revolution, expanding African language footprint in AI technologies. By providing this foundational infrastructure, innovators can create AI solutions that reflect Africa's linguistic diversity and unique cultural realities.
Welcome back. I'm Zain Verjee. We were talking about what sectors and what kind of skills of the future are going to be relevant.
Right.
And what's interesting to me is that a lot of experts, or the conversation is around people that have liberal arts degrees, people that have artistic backgrounds or creativity,
That's it.
you know, they actually are more likely to succeed in something like prompt engineering, which is just a fancy word for prompting. Forget about it. You don't have to be an engineer.
It's a fancy word for writing. It's copyright.
It's just how to ask and how to query an LLM. If you query a large language model in an average way, you're going to get a below average response.
That's correct.
But if you can have historical or cultural references and you're very concise in how you use linguistics, right now, you are going to get a good. You see how.
There you go.
So you could do language acrobatics, and you can elicit something better. I suppose I want to ask here, skills like empathy, critical thinking, creativity, human connection. They can't be replaced by
Those
AI.
are human skills.
Those are human skills.
They can't be replaced.
Right. So
in fact, let me speak to that, and let me say the future is going to be owned by generalists. It's not going to be owned by specialists. Before, we used to have a dentist who knows 60%, 70%, 80% of the profession, and then he's a mechanic on the side, he knows 10%, he's an artist on the side, 10%, and he probably plays an instrument on the side, 10%. But he is or she is a dentist, and that's what he or she is known for. So what happens when the industry of dentistry is replaced by an AI bot that can do that stuff for you? Then the value then isn't how well you are at, or how good you are at playing an instrument or music. It's the variety of things you can do, the range you have. Can you fly a plane? Can you play an instrument? Can you read out Macbeth? Can you be able to create content? Like, what can you do?
Actually, I know Lady Macbeth's role by heart. I'm waiting for someone to invite me to play Lady Macbeth.
This variety is what makes you special. Because at the end of the day, if it's a procedural input, AI will always beat me at that. Like, there's no bank teller that's going to bank tell better than an AI chatbot that can do it. There's no customer service clerk that's going to treat me better than an AI bot that can do it. All these processes will be overtaken by just the prevalence and efficiency and reduced cost of an AI chatbot. But your ability to speak to Macbeth and your ability to connect with me the way, Zain, you have in the 10 minutes we've sat here or 20 minutes we've sat here, that cannot be replaced by a bot. So I will forever value the humanity in you over the technology that is provided by any service.
Thank you. I want to percentage you up here.
Percentage me up.
And I really subscribe to that. This is the age of the generalist, not the specialist.
Yeah.
I was listening to a Harvard professor who talked about the 30% rule. And the 30% rule is in order for you to learn any language or be able to communicate with anyone in a different language, you've got to know about 30% of the language.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So she said, if you take that and apply it to generative AI and this entire space, you kind of just need to know about 30% to get by, right? And I find myself is because I've overcome fear of technology and words like engineering and maths, which I got a D. I think I was in the C set, and I may have gotten a D in maths, and I think my A levels were not that great. My mother was like, "Why did you just read the question? Why did you just answer what you wanted? How could you get this D?" Anyway, it's like that 30% of knowledge on anything in this space is going to carry you in a much further than we ever thought possible. And do you think that we're talking insofar as it's contextually relevant to our continent? Because a lot of people still, we have our issues. We have data issues, infrastructure issues. We have connectivity issues. And, I don't see these as, Africa has all these obstacles, because we're trying to address them. But as an EdTech platform, how do you see some of the challenges that still need to be overcome on the continent before we're happily querying LLMs and, in whatever language we want? Like, what do we need to do as a diverse continent to get there?
I love the story of a quick story of a gentleman that went into a town, they say, and he saw a city or a town of people who don't wear shoes. And then he went back to his boss and says, "We can never sell shoes there. This is never going to work. Nobody wears shoes." And then another gentleman went in, or a salesperson went in, and he saw shoes, and he went back to his boss and said, "Give me all the shoes we can make, because there is nobody wearing shoes, and it's an opportunity here." And I feel like Africa is the second thing. Yes, there are limitations to what we have, but we have built billion-dollar businesses, and I say that with clarity. Billion-dollar businesses on the continent. The opportunity is there, and I feel that those who see the opportunity, and I am one of those believers, as are you, will be able to start pushing the envelope on what is possible. I'm not actually sure, 18 years ago, when M-Pesa started, there was a lot of criticism. People laughed and pointed and said, "This makes no sense." It's the same way when OpenAI started, and I reference that because I know so much about them. And there was a scruffy team of a few people. DeepMind, which was Google's own AI tool, had outmanned, outgunned, outshined them in ways that people looked at them and thought, "What are you doing?" They did Dota, which got them a little bit of money from Microsoft, but still everybody looked down on them until ChatGPT came out, and now the world is scrambling to try and catch up. It's not about how many people you throw at it, how much money you have. I mean, definitely go and ask DeepMind. They will tell you that they had everything at their feet. It's how much dedication, focus, and incentive your small team of scruffy workers has. And Africa is the most scruffy, incentivized young people you've ever seen. Practically, let's begin. From wherever we will start, let's begin. Because whether it is MTN's Momo or Safaricom's M-Pesa or Old Mutual or all the companies that have created the change they have on the continent, they started from nothing. Dangote started from, he's the one who built the billions he has. All the folks who have done phenomenal things, Strive, who's opening up cassava in South Africa, they started from nothing, but they have built in their lifetimes empires because they understood that there was a need and they could service that need. There's nowhere in the world that there's a need like our continent. And there are no other people that understand it like we do and have the skills and the tools around us to be able to do something with it.
And in agriculture and in health.
In all these sectors, education and
yes,
so many. So when I hear only 3% of Kenya is covered by health insurance, I don't think, this is such a disappointment. I think, look at that 97% opportunity that somebody just needs to come and take over. And I can guarantee you this, and I promise you this, and I will even come back here 10 years later and tell you the truth. A lot of sectors will be tossed over their heads. They will be flipped over in their heads because younger generation of folks will come up and recognize that there's an opportunity for us to use AI to change how insurance is done in Kenya, or to change how banking is done in East Africa, or to change how people engage with content on the continent, like you are doing. And when those industries flip, when just one success story is created, the whole continent is set ablaze, because now nothing is set on stone.
And we can have one entrepreneur in Kenya or anywhere else on the continent, building $1 billion business as one individual using artificial intelligence
I can tell you this.
in order to build globally game-changing
There's a
product.
running bet, I believe it's in Y Combinator, of the one founder billion-dollar company.
Yeah.
There's a running bet. When is it going to happen?
Yeah.
Currently, you're looking at companies like Cursor and Lovable that are 20 months in and billion-dollar companies already, with annual recurring revenues excessive of $200 million. This company is not 2 years old. And it's getting faster and faster and faster in its valuation and its use and uptake. So it's bound to happen.
And I also want to add to that argument, like for the last 2 years, I've been told by, Western leaders in all of the major Mag 7 tech companies that, Africa has got to use our large language models because they simply don't have the compute power and they simply don't have the engineering design capacity to be able to even build something like this.
Right.
Then along comes DeepSeek. Now the Chinese are now they are here,
With their
and that is an open
50,000
source.
GPUs. There you go.
So now, now you see you're Kenyan. I'm
I
starting to
understand you.
slur.
I can hear you. We're on the same page. I'm ready for you, young lady. Come to me.
So how do you think the China card is creating new opportunities on the continent?
What DeepSeek did was change the game. It changed the narrative. We always thought that it was a hardware play alone, and everyone was talking NVIDIA chips, GPUs, and the $44,000 this and the $100,000 that.
The 2100s.
Exactly, right? But what China did with DeepSeek, even with the restrictions on chips, shows Africa that even if it's not a policy restriction, it's a financial restriction, this is what we can be able to build. And I'm even more keen now on what China is going to build, because now I know that we have changed perspective from thinking the US is the bar and the standard to looking at China as the bar and the standard. And the relationship we have with them as a continent is a very pragmatic, development-based, outcome-driven relationship. And so I'm very aware of the initial costs that have been put in. OpenAI just raised $40 billion against a $300 billion valuation, which is the highest that has ever happened, mainly for infrastructure. And I appreciate that there's an infrastructure play there, but that's not the only thing that is needed. And I'm sure that whatever it is that is needed, we will find it within the next half decade to put ourselves up in the world.
What is your message to our leaders who play an important role in creating an ecosystem for entrepreneurs, for investors to build the continent and be leaders in AI for our continent, by our continent? What needs to happen?
3 words, all start with P. Number 1, be proactive. Like Kenya just put out the AI strategy document less than a week ago, talking about what it is we want to see as a strategy document, and the policy that they need to come up with for AI after that needs to be as pragmatic and open to different players in the room. So I think being proactive is the first thing, like be involved. The second one is be pragmatic. Let's be realistic about what we have and what we don't have, whether it's compute, talent, infrastructure, markets. Let's be pragmatic about it, because we need to be very clear that we have some things and we don't have some things. Kenya wants to put in maybe $1.5, $1.7 billion towards that. Do we have that kind of capital to put it in? Is there a commercial viability for it? Let's be pragmatic about that. And the third thing is let's create partnerships. What Strive has done with NVIDIA and how they're working with the South African government to put something down, all of that stuff really matters, because no country is going to take this on by themselves. And for our own national security, it's important to have on-prem hardware, on-premises hardware. But we may not be able to pull out, $500 billion worth of investments in a country. So what does it look like if we were to create smaller AI clusters in different countries or even different regions? Who can we work with? Can we work with the UNDP folks? Do we work with folks out of NVIDIA and others? Partnership. With those 3 things, I think the place that Africa sits is the best place, because we are learning from other folks and watching them make the mistakes that they need to make, because they're the ones who are first to market. Let's learn from that, and let's make sure our people benefit from whatever it is we're building. And I think that's a political agenda that everyone can come around.
Tonee Ndungu, thank you so much. I'm inspired by listening to you, how you see the future of the EdTech market on the continent, driven by AI, and I'm really looking forward to getting my pair of wearables.
Nice. I'm really looking forward to getting them
which
too.
you were dying to talk about, but couldn't. I was going to ask you, are they solar powered?
No, love. they need to be connected to the wall.
Okay.
Well, the way we see it is, if there's a mobile phone in the teacher's pocket, that must get power from somewhere.
Sawa sawa.
Yeah.
Asante Ndungu.
Thank you so much for having me, Zain.
Thank you. Thank you so much to Tonee Ndungu for a fantastic conversation of the future of generative AI and EdTech in Africa. Stay tuned to our podcast for more conversations at the summit in Kigali, Rwanda. I'm Zain Verjee, and please do follow us on Spotify, on the Embedded Podcast, as well as subscribe to our Substack. Thank you.